The stars stretched endlessly before Fleet Admiral Doyen as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. For 30 years he had commanded the greatest military force in known space. 847 warships, each capable of destroying entire planets, waited at his command. The Kronos Gate, a massive spatial junction connecting two arms of the galaxy, belonged to him. Nothing passed through this region without his permission. Doyen was Vrelnari, a species that had conquered warfare itself 300 years ago. His four eyes could see multiple tactical displays simultaneously, and his mind processed battle scenarios faster than most computers. He had never lost a single engagement. The Galactic Council trusted him to keep the peace, and he did so with absolute efficiency. Captain Yeri, his second-in-command, approached from the sensor station. She moved with the grace common to her species, her scaled skin reflecting the bridge lights. "Admiral, routine patrol reports are complete. Sector 7 remains clear. No anomalies detected." Doyen nodded. It was always the same. Peaceful, boring. The last real threat to Council space had been eliminated decades ago. Sometimes he wondered if the galaxy even needed such a large fleet anymore. Then he remembered the words carved above the Council chambers. "Peace through strength endures forever." Tactical Officer Minho interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, we have something unusual. Sensors detected a spatial distortion at grid reference Theta 9. "Define unusual," Doyen said, moving to the tactical display. Minho's fingers danced across his console. A vessel just emerged from uncharted space. Single ship, approximately 3 kilometers in length. No identification beacon. No response to automated hails. Doyen studied the image forming on the main screen. The ship was enormous, but its design looked ancient. Straight lines and angular construction, unlike the elegant curves of modern vessels. The hull appeared to be simple metal, possibly titanium alloy. No visible shield generators. No energy signatures indicating active weapon systems. "A derelict?" Yeri suggested. Science Officer Sunmi joined them at the display. Her species specialized in analysis and research, and her reputation for accuracy was flawless. "Possibly, but the hull integrity is perfect. No damage, no corrosion. If it's a derelict, it's remarkably well preserved." Doyen made his decision quickly. "Captain Jiwan, prepare your squadron for intercept. 3 battle cruisers should be sufficient. Escort the vessel to Quarantine Zone Alpha. Standard salvage protocols." Captain Jiwan's face appeared on the communications screen. He commanded one of the fleet's most prestigious squadrons, and his confidence matched his reputation. "Understood, Admiral. We'll have this wrapped up within the hour." As G1's 3 cruisers broke formation and accelerated toward the unknown vessel, Doyen returned to his command chair. Salvage operations were routine. Occasionally, old exploration ships drifted back into known space, their crews long dead and their systems offline. The Council had strict procedures for such discoveries. Everything would be cataloged, studied, and either preserved or recycled. 30 minutes passed. G1's squadron closed to within 50,000 kilometers of the unknown ship. Doyen watched the tactical display with mild interest. Soon this minor interruption would be over, and he could return to his daily reports. Then the unknown ship transmitted. The voice that came through the speakers was wrong. Not distorted or damaged, just wrong. It spoke Galactic Standard perfectly, but the accent sent chills through everyone who heard it. The pronunciation matched historical records that Doyen had studied in military academy, records of a species that no longer existed. "This is UHSV Retribution. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your vessels. This is your only warning." Silence filled the bridge. Sunmi rushed to her console, her hands shaking as she pulled up linguistic analysis programs. Doyen felt his blood run cold. UHSV. United Human Systems Vessel. But that was impossible. "Confirm that transmission," he ordered. Minho replayed it 3 times. Each playback made the impossible more certain. Sunmi looked up from her console, her face pale. "Admiral, the linguistic patterns match archived human speech from before the Great Silence. But humans have been extinct for 463 years. Yeri moved closer to Doyen's chair, her voice quiet. "Sir, what are your orders?" Doyen's mind raced. Humans were extinct. Every textbook, every historical record confirmed it. In the year 2384, every human colony, every human ship, every human station had gone silent simultaneously. The Council had sent investigation fleets. They found empty colonies, abandoned ships, and no bodies. The conclusion was obvious. Some catastrophe had wiped out humanity in a single coordinated event. Perhaps a plague, perhaps a war, perhaps something else. But the result was undeniable. Humanity was gone. Yet now a ship claiming to be human had appeared in his sector, issuing warnings like it had authority here. "Captain Jiwan," Doyun said, his voice steady despite his confusion. "Did you receive that transmission?" Jiwan's laugh came through clearly. "Yes, Admiral. Quite entertaining. Perhaps it's an automated defense system from an old colony ship. Some forgotten warning protocol still running after all these centuries. Exercise caution," Doyun warned. "Of course, sir. But my sensors show no active shields, no charging weapons, no powered engines. This ship is dead in space. We'll have it secured in minutes." Doyun watched as Jiwan's 3 battlecruisers, each carrying 4,000 crew members, moved into boarding formation around the unknown vessel. Each cruiser possessed enough firepower to level a continent. Their shields could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. They represented the pinnacle of Council military engineering. The unknown ship remained motionless. No systems activated, no defensive measures engaged. It simply floated in space, dark and silent. Jiwan opened a channel to the vessel. "Unknown ship, this is Captain Jiwan of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are in violation of Council space. Power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with immediate destruction." 15 seconds passed. 20. 25. "Admiral," Minho said quietly. "Their 30 seconds are almost up." Doyun leaned forward in his chair. Something felt wrong. His instincts, honed over 3 decades of command, screamed danger. But his tactical displays showed nothing threatening. The unknown ship had no active weapons, no shields, no power signatures beyond basic life support. 30 seconds. "Captain Jiwan, pull back," Doyun ordered suddenly. But he was 1 second too late. The unknown ship didn't power up weapons because, as Doyun would learn in the final moments of his life, they had never been powered down. What his sensors had read as inactive systems was actually technology, so advanced that it didn't register on Council instruments. The heat signature he thought indicated a cold, dead ship was actually thermal dispersal operating at maximum efficiency. The retribution fired. There was no dramatic buildup, no charging weapons, no warning lights. One moment 3 battlecruisers existed, the next moment they simply didn't. 12,000 lives ended before Doyun's mind could process what his eyes were seeing. The tactical display went blank where G1's squadron had been. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone as if they had never existed at all. Doyun stared at the empty space on his screen, unable to comprehend. Around him, his bridge crew sat frozen in shock. Hieri's hand gripped the back of his chair so hard her claws pierced the material. "What just happened?" someone whispered. The unknown ship transmitted again, and this time Doyun heard something in that human voice that he had missed before. Not anger, not hatred, something colder and far more terrifying, certainty. "You were warned," the voice said. "You chose this." And Doyun realized, with the clarity that comes in moments of absolute horror, that his fleet was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. Admiral Doyun's hand slammed down on the alert button. Klaxons screamed through every ship in the fleet. 844 warships, the survivors of his once mighty force, shifted into combat formation. Weapon systems that could crack moons powered up across the entire battle group. Shield generators hummed to life, creating defensive barriers strong enough to withstand nuclear fire. Tactical Officer Minho's voice cracked as he read the sensor data. "Admiral, I'm not detecting any debris from Captain G1's squadron. No wreckage, no escape pods, no energy signatures. They're just gone." Doyun forced himself to think. 30 years of command experience told him to retreat, to pull back and assess. But 3 centuries of Council doctrine said no unknown vessel could threaten the combined might of a full battle group. His fleet represented more destructive power than most species had possessed in their entire history. "Battle Group Theta, advance to attack formation," he ordered. His voice remained steady, though inside he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. 47 warships broke from the main fleet, each one larger and more powerful than G1's lost cruisers. They spread out in a standard engagement pattern, creating overlapping fields of fire that could dismantle a small moon. Their captains were the best the Council had trained. Their crews had drilled for every possible scenario. They had never drilled for this. The human vessel moved, and Doyen's mind refused to accept what his eyes showed him. The ship didn't accelerate. It didn't engage engines or thrusters. It simply was in one location, then was in another location 200,000 kilometers away. The transition took 3 seconds. Physics said this was impossible. Reality disagreed. How? Hayeri whispered beside him. Science officer Sunmi's hands flew across her console. It's moving through folded space, but not like hyperspace. It's like the ship is convincing the universe that it's already where it wants to be. I don't understand the mechanism. Our physics can't do this. The human ship positioned itself in the exact center of Battle Group Theta's formation. 47 warships surrounded it, weapons locked, ready to fire. The Retribution sat motionless, as if waiting. All ships fire at will. Doyen commanded. Energy weapons from 47 ships converged on a single target. Plasma so hot it could melt through starship armor in seconds washed over the human vessel. Quantum missiles that could phase through shields detonated against its hull. Particle beams designed to strip atoms apart hammered the ship from every angle. The barrage lasted 15 seconds. When the energy cleared, the human ship remained exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. Then it fired a single pulse. Weapons Officer Tae-hyun screamed as his displays went white. 47 ships experienced catastrophic core breaches simultaneously, not from external damage but from within. The human weapon had somehow reached inside each ship's power core and turned it into a bomb. 188,000 crew members died in the space of a heartbeat. Entire families serving together on the same ships. Veterans with decades of experience. Recruits on their first assignments. All gone, turned to ash and vapor by technology that shouldn't exist. Doyen watched his fleet die and made a decision that would haunt him for the remaining minutes of his life. He activated Protocol Omega, the total fleet mobilization order. Every ship under his command received one simple instruction: destroy the threat at any cost. 800 warships converged on the human vessel. The space around the Kronos Gate lit up like a newborn star, as every weapon in the Council's arsenal fired at once. This wasn't a battle. This was an execution, an overwhelming display of force that would vaporize anything caught in its path. The human ship absorbed it all. Sunmi's voice rose in panic. Admiral, it's using our weapons as a power source. Every hit is making it stronger. Doyen felt reality sliding away from him. Nothing in 3 centuries of Council warfare prepared him for this. His fleet was feeding energy to the very enemy they were trying to destroy. Cease fire, he ordered. All ships cease fire. But it was too late. The Retribution had what it needed. The human ship began to glow, its hull radiating energy and frequencies Doyen's sensors couldn't measure. For 3 seconds it simply held that energy, containing power equivalent to a small star. Then it released it. The weapon didn't travel through space. It warped space. Gravitational shear waves propagated through the combat zone and ships didn't explode. They compressed. 3-dimensional vessels became 2-dimensional debris, as if a giant hand had simply flattened them. Doyen watched on his tactical display as 500 warships were reduced to thin sheets of crushed metal, their crews dying without ever understanding what killed them. 300 ships remained. Doyen's hands shook as he reached for the final option. Protocol restrictions existed for good reason. Treaties signed in blood after wars that nearly destroyed entire species. But those treaties meant nothing now. Activate the stellar breaker, he whispered. Yeri grabbed his arm. Sir, that weapon is banned by every civilized species. If we use it, we're no better than... Look at your screen. Doyen roared, pointing at the tactical display where his fleet was dying. That thing has killed 3 million of our people in 3 minutes. Protocols are meaningless. Fire the weapon. The stellar breaker activated deep within the Eternal Victory's core. It was a weapon created during the darkest days of the Council's formation, capable of igniting stars and turning entire solar systems into funeral pyres. Using it was considered a war crime by every known species. A sphere of contained fusion reaction, a miniature star, launched from the flagship toward the human vessel. If it reached its target and detonated, nothing would survive. Not the human ship, not the remaining Council fleet, not the Kronos Gate itself. Doyen had just sentenced everyone in the sector to death, including himself. The Retribution moved again, that same impossible transition through folded space. One moment it was 1,000 kilometers from the stellar breaker. The next moment it was right beside it. And then the human ship did something that would be analyzed by the survivors for years to come, though none would ever understand it. It caught the miniature star. Doyen watched as the retribution extended a field of energy he couldn't identify and simply held the stellar breaker's payload. A contained fusion reaction hot enough to ignite planets, held in place by human technology like a child catching a ball. For 15 seconds, the human ship contained the power of a sun. Its hull glowed brighter than the stars around it. Energy readings from Sunmi Station went off the scale. Then the retribution did something even worse. It threw it back, the miniature star came screaming toward the Council, fleet in a focused beam of stellar fury. Doyen had 1 second to realize what was happening. 1 second to understand that his own weapon, the forbidden horror he had unleashed, was going to kill everyone he had sworn to protect. The eternal victory died first. The fusion reaction hit the flagship's shields and punched through them like they didn't exist. Doyen saw the bridge walls turning white-hot. He heard Hieri scream. He felt Minho grab his shoulder. He watched Sunmi try to run toward the escape pods. Then there was only light and heat, and an ending that came too fast for pain. The remaining 347 ships followed within seconds. The focused stellar beam swept through them like a blade, igniting reactor cores, vaporizing hulls, turning ships and crews into expanding clouds of superheated gas. At exactly 4 minutes from the moment Captain Jiwan had died, the last Council ship at the Kronos Gate ceased to exist. The human vessel hung in space, surrounded by the expanding debris of 847 warships. 3.4 million crew members had entered this sector alive. None remained. Only one ship survived, a small scout vessel so far from the battle that it had escaped the stellar breaker's destructive radius. Lieutenant Borum, a junior communications officer who had been documenting routine patrol data, watched the entire engagement on her sensors. Her hands trembled as she engaged her ship's emergency beacon and set course for the nearest Council station. Behind her, the Retribution broadcast a message to the empty sector. Not to the dead fleet, not to the Council. To the galaxy itself, this was your warning. You will understand soon enough. Then the human ship vanished, folding space around itself and disappearing back into the darkness from which it had come. The Kronos Gate fell silent. Only automated distress beacons remained, screaming into the void, telling anyone who would listen that the strongest fleet in known space had lasted exactly 4 minutes against a single human warship. Lieutenant Borum's scout ship limped through space, its damaged engines barely maintaining propulsion. She had watched 3.4 million people die in 4 minutes, and her mind still couldn't process it. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the tactical display, watched the fleet markers disappear one by one until only her own remained. The emergency beacon had been screaming for 6 hours when Council Station Meridian finally responded. Their message was confused, disbelieving. No single ship could destroy an entire battle group. The systems must be malfunctioning. Lieutenant Borum must have suffered a mental breakdown. Then they accessed her ship's black box and went silent. Defense Minister Kyung-ho stood in the Council's emergency chamber, watching the battle footage for the 7th time. Around him, representatives from the 12 species sat in absolute silence. They had ruled the galaxy for 300 years, maintained peace through overwhelming military superiority, and created a civilization that spanned thousands of worlds, and they had just watched their strongest fleet die in 4 minutes. "Play it again," said Council Speaker Jinwoo, his voice hollow. The holographic display showed the Retribution's first strike. 3 battle cruisers simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just empty space where ships had been. Kyung-ho heard someone in the chamber start crying. "How is this possible?" whispered Representative Soman of the Telkari species. Her people specialized in defensive technology, and she had designed many of the shields that had failed to protect the fleet. Intelligence Director Yunji stepped forward. She had spent the last 12 hours gathering every piece of data on the engagement, and what she had found terrified her more than the battle itself. "The human vessel didn't use conventional weapons," she explained, her voice shaking. "It used technology we can't understand. The first strike somehow disrupted the quantum bonds holding matter together. The ships didn't explode. They stopped existing as coherent objects." "And the gravitational attack?" Kyung-ho asked. "It weaponized space-time itself. Our ships were crushed by localized gravity fields, strong enough to flatten 3-dimensional objects into 2-dimensional debris." The crew died without the ship's sensors ever registering an attack. The chamber fell silent again. Council Speaker Jinwoo looked older than his 60 years. And the stellar breaker? Our forbidden weapon? Yoonji pulled up footage of the human ship catching the miniature star. It contained a fusion reaction equivalent to a small sun for 15 seconds, then redirected it back at the fleet. Our best scientists say this is impossible. The energy requirements alone would exceed the total power output of most star systems. But they did it anyway, Kyung-ho said quietly. Chief Archivist Dong-yun had been sitting silently throughout the briefing, but now he stood. His species had the longest lifespan in the council, and he had personally curated the historical archives for over 200 years. If anyone knew the truth about humanity, it would be him. I need to show you something, he said. Something that was classified 463 years ago. He led them to the deepest level of the council archives, past security systems that most council members didn't know existed. In a vault that hadn't been opened in centuries, he accessed files marked with the highest security classification. The Great Silence of 2384, Dong-yun began. The official record states that humanity went extinct due to an unknown catastrophe. Every human colony, ship, and station went silent simultaneously. Investigation teams found abandoned settlements but no bodies. The conclusion was extinction. We know this, Kyung-ho said impatiently. What are you really showing us? Dong-yun pulled up a classified report, its age evident in the ancient file format. This is the real investigation report, suppressed by the council leadership at the time. Humanity didn't go extinct. They left, the chamber erupted in chaos. Voices overlapped as representatives shouted questions and accusations. Jinwoo hammered his gavel for order. Explain yourself, archivist. Dong-yun displayed scout reports from 2384, showing human colonies on the galactic rim. These settlements were found intact, carefully evacuated. No signs of struggle, no damage. The humans had packed up and left in an organized manner. The scouts also found this. A message appeared on the screen, written in ancient galactic standard. Its content made Kyung-ho's blood run cold. We are leaving known space. Not because we fear you, but because we fear ourselves. Humanity has proven it cannot be trusted with its own survival. We will return when we have learned to be better. If you find this message, know that everything we left behind is yours. Consider it payment for peace. Do not look for us. The council leadership decided that telling the truth would cause panic, Dong-yun continued. If humanity could simply leave known space, what did that say about council authority? So they declared humans extinct and claimed human territory. It was easier than admitting a species had simply walked away from our entire civilization. Representative Heian of the Kryloth species stood, her anger obvious. So we've been living on stolen land for 4 centuries? Building our empire on human graves we dug ourselves? Yes, Dong-yun said simply. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the council station. Intelligence Director Yoonji's communicator lit up with urgent messages. She listened for a moment, her face going pale. Another human ship has appeared, she announced. At Sanctuary Prime, orbiting our primary shipyard. The council chamber emptied as representatives rushed to the command center. The holographic display showed Sanctuary Prime, the council's capital world home to 8 billion citizens. And in orbit, hanging above the planet's largest shipyard like a dark promise, was a vessel that made the Retribution look small. It transmitted a single identifier, UHSV Absolution. Deploy the defense fleet, Kyung-ho ordered. Sir, said Fleet Coordinator Youngman, the defense fleet is already deployed. 300 ships surrounding the human vessel. It hasn't responded to hails or threats. They watched as the human ship did nothing for 5 long minutes. Council warships surrounded it, weapons armed, ready to fire on command. The tension in the command center was suffocating. Then the Absolution moved. But it didn't attack. Instead, it extended tractor beams of impossible power and began dismantling the shipyard. Not destroying it, dismantling it. The massive orbital construction facility, 15 years of work, 200,000 workers currently inside, began to separate into component parts. Open fire, Kyung-ho screamed. The defense fleet fired everything at the human vessel. Energy weapons, missiles, quantum bombs. The Absolution's shields absorbed the attacks without even flickering. It continued its work methodically like a surgeon performing a delicate operation. For 12 minutes, the Council fleet hammered at the human ship while it calmly took apart Sanctuary Prime's shipyard. Workers evacuated in escape pods, but the facility itself was beyond saving. The Absolution separated every deck, every module, every structural component, and cataloged everything with frightening efficiency. Then, while the Council watched in horror, it compressed the entire shipyard into a cube 3 meters across. 15 years of construction, billions of credits in resources, the pride of Council engineering, reduced to a metal cube that the human ship placed in a stable orbit around Sanctuary Prime. The Absolution transmitted a message. We wanted to destroy this. We chose mercy instead. Learn from it. Then it vanished, leaving the defense fleet firing at empty space and the compressed remains of the shipyard orbiting above the capital like a tombstone. The Council chamber was silent when they reconvened an hour later. 2 human ships, 2 demonstrations of absolute technological superiority, and they had barely begun to understand what they were facing. A new transmission arrived, broadcast to every Council station simultaneously. The holographic display showed a human for the first time in 4 centuries. He stood on the bridge of a vessel so large it could have swallowed the Absolution. "I am Admiral Jamin of the United Human Systems," he said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. "You killed 3 million of your own people by attacking our scout ship. You built your empire on our abandoned homes. You declared us extinct and stole what we left behind. These are your crimes." Kyung-ho felt his heart hammering. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on the human admiral. "This is your judgment," Jamin continued. "You have 1 standard year to withdraw from all systems within 500 light-years of the Sagittarius arm. That space belonged to humanity. It will again. After 1 year, any non-human vessel in human space will be destroyed without warning. There will be no negotiation. Comply or die," the transmission ended. The Council sat in stunned silence. Representative Hana, the peace advocate, finally spoke. "The Sagittarius arm contains 7 of our homeworlds, 200 billion citizens, 40% of Council territory. Evacuation is impossible." "Then we fight," Kyung-ho said, though his voice lacked conviction. Dong-yun, the archivist, pulled up one final classified file, the last fragment he had found in the restricted archives. It was a warning from a human diplomat, recorded days before the Great Silence. "If you ever see ships bearing the designation UHS Vengeance class, run. Don't fight, don't negotiate, run. Those ships aren't meant for war. They're meant for extinction." Research specialist Junho hadn't slept in 3 days. His eyes burned as he studied the data fragments recovered from the Retribution's engagement, trying to understand technology that seemed to violate every known law of physics. Around him, the Council's best scientists worked in similar states of exhaustion, searching desperately for a weakness they could exploit. They found nothing but more questions. "The energy signatures don't make sense," Junho muttered to himself for the 100th time. "Their power generation exceeds what should be possible. Unless..." Science Coordinator Minji looked up from her own terminal. "Unless what?" "Unless they're not generating power at all. What if they're extracting it from somewhere else? Another dimension, maybe? Dark matter conversion? That's theoretical physics. No one has ever successfully tapped dark matter for energy." "Humanity did," Junho said quietly. 463 years ago, they disappeared into dark space beyond the galactic rim. What if they didn't just hide there? What if they learned to use it? Minji pulled up astronomical data from the region where the Retribution had first appeared. The area beyond the galactic rim was considered uninhabitable, filled with dark matter and exotic particles that made normal matter unstable. No species could survive there without technology that didn't exist, except the scans showed something impossible. Massive energy signatures, thousands of them, in a region that should be empty. Artificial gravity wells surrounding manufactured suns. And ships. So many ships that the sensors couldn't count them all. "Get Defense Minister Kyung-ho," Minji whispered. "Right now." Within an hour, the Council's Emergency Committee gathered again. Kyung-ho looked at the astronomical data with growing horror. "How many ships are we seeing?" he asked. "At least 10,000, Minji replied. "Possibly more. Our sensors can't penetrate deep enough into dark space to get an accurate count." Representative Somin studied the energy readings. Those gravity wells. They're holding entire habitats in place. Humanity didn't just survive in dark space. They built a civilization there. Diplomat Sora, an expert in cultural analysis, had been reviewing recovered human transmissions. She stood now, her expression grave. I need to show you what I found. We've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in Admiral Jamin's message. The way humans speak has changed significantly from historical records. She played audio samples comparing ancient human transmissions with the modern ones. The differences were subtle but disturbing. The old recordings showed variety, emotion, cultural diversity. The new transmissions sounded unified, almost mechanical in their precision. They don't speak like a diverse species anymore, Sora explained. They speak like a single organism. 463 years of isolation has changed them fundamentally. Whatever political or cultural divisions existed before, they're gone now. What does that mean for us? Kyung-ho asked. It means we can't negotiate with factions. We can't exploit internal conflicts. Humanity is unified in a way no species in council space has ever achieved, and they're unified around one principle. Sora pulled up recovered data from the Absolution's transmission, decoded fragments that had taken her team days to decrypt. The words appeared on the screen, simple and terrifying. Never again will we be weak. Never again will we fracture. Never again will we trust others with our survival. The room fell silent. Archivist Donghyun nodded slowly. They learned from their history. Before the Great Silence, humanity was at war with itself. The Outer Colonies' war nearly destroyed their species. They chose exile to prevent extinction. And in that exile, they rebuilt themselves into something new. Something dangerous, Kyung-ho added. Something that won't make the same mistakes twice. Donghyun corrected. Intelligence reports continued flooding in over the following weeks. Human ships appeared randomly throughout Council space, always watching, never attacking. Whenever Council vessels approached, the human ships vanished using that same impossible space-folding technology. Fleet Commander Youngman coordinated the military response, assembling 40,000 warships from all 12 species. It was the largest fleet ever gathered, drawing ships from every corner of Council territory. New weapons were designed specifically to counter human technology, quantum disruptors to prevent space folding, reality anchors to lock ships in normal space-time, causality weapons that struck targets before being fired. Everything forbidden by treaty was now authorized. The Council was preparing for total war, but Intelligence Officer Nari found something that threatened to tear the alliance apart. In suppressed historical records, she discovered that the Council's leadership in 2384 had known the truth. They had found evidence of humanity's planned evacuation. They had found the goodbye message, and they had deliberately hidden it. They wanted the territory, Nari explained in a secret meeting with Council Speaker Jinwoo. 7 species had been eyeing human space for decades. When humanity left, the Council leaders saw an opportunity. Declare them extinct, claim the territory, and no one would question it. It was the largest peaceful land grab in galactic history. How many people know this? Jinwoo asked, his voice tight. It's starting to leak. Some species are beginning to ask why we're defending territory we stole in the first place. The Council began to fracture. Public protests erupted on worlds throughout Council space. Some citizens saw humanity as victims of Council greed. Others saw them as existential threats that needed to be destroyed. The unity that had maintained peace for centuries started crumbling. 3 months before the deadline, Ambassador Seojin led a desperate diplomatic mission into human space. The Council had authorized him to offer anything: reparations, territory, formal apologies, whatever humanity demanded. They just needed to avoid war. Human ships intercepted his small diplomatic vessel at the border of the Sagittarius Arm. They transmitted coordinates and a single word: come. Seojin's ship followed the coordinates to a system deep in former human territory. What he found there made him understand why humanity couldn't forgive, couldn't negotiate, couldn't trust. The system contained a massive space station, clearly of human construction. But it wasn't a military facility. It was a memorial. Admiral Jamin met him in a chamber containing 4.7 billion names etched into walls that stretched for kilometers. Each name represented a human who had died in the Outer Colonies' war or during the exile. Each name was a reminder of why humanity had left. We built this so we would never forget, Jamin said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. Never forget the price of our mistakes. Never forget what happens when we trust the wrong people. Never forget why we can't afford weakness. Seojin walked through the memorial, reading name after name. Children, parents, entire families wiped out. We didn't cause this. The Council didn't make you go to war with yourselves. No, Jimin agreed. But you did take advantage of our tragedy. You looted our homes while we mourned. You built your empire on our graves and called it progress. We're offering reparations. Full territory return, formal apologies. Whatever you want. Jimin's expression didn't change. We want something you can't give us. We want the 463 years back. We want the people who died in exile because we couldn't provide adequate medical care for the first 50 years. We want the children who were born in exile and died never seeing a natural planet. We want our home back the way it was, not the way you left it after stripping it for parts. Then what's the point of this meeting? Seojin asked. Why bring me here if you won't negotiate? So you understand? When your fleets die, when your world's empty, when your species scatters to refugee camps, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to know that we gave you a choice. We gave you a year. We gave you mercy we never received. Seojin returned to council space with the grim news. No negotiation was possible. Humanity wanted justice, and their definition of justice was complete withdrawal from territory the council had occupied for 4 centuries. The council split into 2 factions. 7 species voted for war, convinced they could defeat humanity through sheer numbers. 5 species voted for evacuation, prioritizing survival over pride. The alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 300 years shattered in a single vote. War Minister Daeho led the military faction, positioning 27,000 warships at the border of the Sagittarius Arm. They represented 7 species, their most advanced technology, their best crews. If humanity wanted war, they would have it. Evacuation Coordinator Chanwoo led the civilian faction, organizing the largest refugee movement in history. 80 billion people agreed to leave their homes. 120 billion refused, either unable to accept displacement or unwilling to abandon their worlds. Both groups prepared in their own ways. Both believed they were right, and both would soon learn that humanity's definition of mercy was very different from their own. The deadline approached like an avalanche, slow and unstoppable. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if the species that had once been considered weak and extinct could truly challenge the might of civilizations that had ruled the stars for centuries. They would have their answer soon enough. The last day before the deadline arrived with false calm. War Minister Daeho stood on the bridge of his command ship, the New Dawn, watching his fleet spread across the border of the Sagittarius Arm like a wall of steel and fury. 27,000 warships representing 7 species who refused to surrender their territory. Each ship gleamed with new weapons designed specifically to fight humans. Each crew had trained for months in anti-human combat tactics. They believed they were ready. They believed numbers would matter. Fleet Commander Youngman reviewed the battle plans one final time. The strategy was simple: overwhelming force applied simultaneously. Don't give the humans time to use their advanced technology. Strike fast, strike hard, and accept casualties as necessary. Computer simulations suggested they could win if they were willing to lose 60% of the fleet. Daeho had authorized those losses. Better to sacrifice ships than surrender worlds. On the other side of council space, Evacuation Coordinator Chanwoo watched the last transport ships leave Sanctuary Prime. 80 billion refugees, displaced from 7 homeworlds, and hundreds of colonies. The evacuation had taken the entire year, and still it wasn't enough. 120 billion had refused to leave, choosing to stay on their worlds and face whatever came. Chanwoo understood their choice even if he disagreed with it. These people had lived their entire lives on these worlds. Their ancestors were buried here. Their cultures were rooted in this soil. Asking them to leave was asking them to stop being who they were. But staying meant facing humanity's judgment, and Chanwoo had seen what that looked like. The deadline expired at midnight Galactic Standard Time. For exactly 5 minutes, nothing happened. Sensors remained clear. No ships appeared. No transmissions were received. Some of the Council fleet began to hope that humanity had changed its mind. Then the stars went dark. Not literally, but on every sensor display across the border fleet, human vessels appeared along a 500 light-year front, so many that the tactical computers couldn't count them fast enough. Not hundreds, not thousands. Tens of thousands of ships, each one larger than the Retribution, spread across Council space like a dark tide. Daeho stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The simulations had predicted a human fleet of maybe 5,000 ships. This was 4 times that number. and the sensors were still counting. "All ships battle formation," he ordered, his voice steady despite the ice in his chest. "Engage at maximum range." The Council fleet opened fire, 27,000 ships unleashing everything they had. The space between the fleets lit up with energy weapons, missiles, and exotic matter bombs. It was the largest opening salvo in galactic history. The human shields absorbed it all without flickering. Then the human fleet fired back. The battle lasted 8 hours, though the outcome was decided in the first 8 minutes. The Council's new weapons failed one by one. Quantum disruptors that were supposed to prevent space folding had no effect on technology that didn't use quantum mechanics the way Council science understood them. Reality anchors that should have locked ships in normal spacetime simply shattered when human vessels moved through folded space. Causality weapons that struck targets before being fired somehow missed ships that weren't bound by linear time. Every advantage the Council had prepared, every clever tactic, every desperate strategy failed against an enemy that had evolved beyond their understanding of physics itself. War Minister Deho watched his fleet die in sections. The humans didn't use the same weapons as the Retribution. These ships employed different technology, each one more horrifying than the last. Some fired beams that aged ships thousands of years in seconds, turning advanced warships into floating scrap metal. Others released swarms of nanomachines that disassembled vessels atom by atom, harvesting the raw materials for later use. A few used weapons that simply made ships forget they existed, causing crews to abandon perfectly functional vessels in confusion. Fleet Commander Youngman died when his flagship was hit by a weapon that reversed entropy locally. The ship didn't explode. It unbuilt itself, separating back into the component materials it had been constructed from, the crew dying as their bodies experienced the same reversal. Deho ordered retreat after the first hour, but there was nowhere to retreat to. Human ships had surrounded the entire fleet using that impossible space-folding movement. The battle became a massacre, then an execution, then finally just cleanup. When Deho's own ship, the New Dawn, finally died, the human weapon was almost merciful. One moment he stood on the bridge watching his fleet's last ships fall. The next moment he simply wasn't. No pain, no awareness, just transition from being to not being. 27,000 ships, 7 species' finest warriors, gone in 8 hours without destroying a single human vessel. On the Council worlds in the Sagittarius Arm, the 120 billion who had refused to evacuate waited for invasion. They armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find. They built defenses around their cities. They prepared to fight for their homes. The human fleet arrived in orbit above each world simultaneously. Massive ships that dwarfed anything in Council space hung in the sky like dark moons. The civilians waited for bombardment, for invasion, for the extinction they had been promised. Instead, they felt strange, a tingling sensation across their entire bodies like static electricity. Then the world shifted. They weren't on their planets anymore. 120 billion people found themselves in massive habitats in deep space, far from the Sagittarius Arm. The habitats had been prepared in advance, containing food, water, medical facilities, and basic housing. Everything needed for survival, nothing more. The humans had used technology the Council didn't possess to transport entire populations across thousands of light years in an instant. Not killed, not enslaved, displaced. A transmission played in every habitat simultaneously. Admiral Jamin's face appeared on screens throughout the refugee camps. "You refused to leave peacefully, so we moved you by force. Consider this the mercy we promised. You are alive. You are safe. You are no longer on our worlds. The habitats contain enough resources for 20 years. Use that time wisely. Find new homes. Build new lives. But never return to the Sagittarius Arm. That space is human again now and forever." The transmission ended. The refugees stared at their new reality, trying to comprehend what had happened. They had been removed from their homes without violence, transported across the galaxy without permission, and dumped in artificial habitats like unwanted cargo. It was the most terrifying display of technological superiority any species had ever witnessed. The humans could have killed them all. Instead, they had simply moved them, proving that Council civilization existed only because humanity allowed it. The Council, what remained of it, held an emergency session in a temporary facility far from Sanctuary Prime. The 12 species were now down to 8. 3 had withdrawn from the Alliance entirely after the fleet's destruction. 1 had petitioned humanity directly for peaceful relations, bypassing the Council completely. Council Speaker Jinwoo looked older, broken. What do we do now? No one answered for a long time. Finally, Archivist Dongyun spoke, his ancient voice tired. We accept reality. Humanity has reclaimed its territory. We have lost the ability to challenge them. The Council as we knew it is finished. So we just surrender? Representative Hana asked. We acknowledge defeat and pray they leave us alone, Donghyun replied. The galaxy had changed in a single day. The Council's 300-year reign ended not with politics or diplomacy, but with brutal demonstration of power. The 12 species fractured into independent factions, some hostile to each other, all terrified of humanity. Human ships patrolled the borders of their reclaimed territory, but didn't expand further. They had made their point. The Sagittarius arm belonged to humanity again, and any species that forgot that lesson would receive another demonstration. On Earth, restored and repopulated after 4 centuries of absence, crowds gathered at a new memorial built beside the old one. This memorial didn't contain names. It contained a single inscription visible from orbit. They made us leave. They stole our graves. They forced our hand. We made them remember. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget, and humanity always comes home. Admiral Jamin stood in his private quarters looking at star charts showing the Sagittarius arm clear of non-human vessels. His mission was complete. Humanity had returned, reclaimed what was theirs, and established dominance without total extinction. His second-in-command, Captain Mira, joined him at the display. The border patrols report no incursions. Council species are maintaining distance. Good, Jamin said quietly. We didn't want this war. We wanted peace in our exile. They forced our hand. Do you think they understand now? Jamin thought of War Minister Daeho, dying without knowing what killed him. He thought of the 120 billion refugees displaced but alive. He thought of the Council's shattered alliance and broken pride. They understand that we're stronger. Whether they understand why we're stronger is another question. 463 years, Mira. 4 centuries of isolation, of struggling to survive in conditions that should have killed us. We evolved out of necessity.